They didn't just destroy people. They erased entire black civilizations, stole their work and craft, and put it in museums around Europe. And then they erased the memory that they ever existed. This is not a conspiracy. This is history, buried under colonial lies, hidden behind glass cases in London, Berlin, and Paris. A history of fire, of blood, of brilliance. A history of a city so powerful, so advanced, so organized that European explorers couldn't believe what they were seeing. A city of kings, a city of bronze and ivory. A city with streets so wide and clean, they rivaled Europe itself. This is the story of Benin City, the heart of one of Africa's greatest empires. The kingdom the world tried to forget. Long before colonization, long before European empires carved Africa into pieces, there stood a kingdom in what is now southern Nigeria. Its capital, Benin City. But this was no ordinary city. This was a masterpiece. At its heights, it was a sophisticated urban center. While parts of Europe were still struggling with sanitation, Benin had structured governance, advanced metallurgy, and massive defensive walls. The monarchy was led by the divine king, the Oba. The Oba wasn't just a ruler. He was a living symbol of order. Under Oba Ovonramwen, the city transformed. He built massive walls and moats and turned Benin into a military and cultural powerhouse. The walls of Benin were among the largest earthworks in human history, stretching for thousands of kilometers. Yet, you were never taught about them. In the 1600s, Dutch traders arrived. One of them, Olfert Dapper, documented the great city, its broad streets and orderly houses. This wasn't European propaganda. This was shock, because what they found destroyed the lie that Africa was uncivilized. But nothing confused Europeans more than Benin's art. These weren't simple decorations. These were historical records and royal archives. The famous Benin Bronzes were masterpieces created using advanced casting techniques that Europe itself struggled to replicate at the time. An African kingdom producing art so complex that Europeans assumed it must have been made by outsiders or lost European work. The truth was simple. Benin created it. Benin mastered it. The artisans belonged to powerful guilds, preserving history through art. This was not primitive. This was organized industry. This was cultural intelligence. This was civilization. By the 1800s, Europe had changed. The Industrial Revolution created hunger for raw materials, trade routes, power, and Africa became the target. Then came the scramble for Africa, a brutal race where European nations divided an entire continent among themselves. New permission, no negotiation, just conquest. Benin stood in their way because Benin refused to be controlled. The Oba at the time, Oba Ovonramwen, he resisted British interference, refused unfair trade agreements, protected his kingdom's sovereignty. That resistance made Benin a target. In 1897, everything changed. The Benin Expedition of 1897 was not a peaceful mission. It was war. British forces invaded Benin City, burned it, destroyed it, looted everything they could carry. Thousands of artworks taken, stolen, scattered across Europe. Today, Those same artifacts sit in places like the British Museum, museums in Germany, collections across France, displayed, admired, studied, but disconnected from the people who created them. But the destruction wasn't just physical, it was psychological. History books were rewritten. Africa was labeled primitive. Civilizations like Benin were erased from global memory. Generations grew up never knowing what was lost. The fires didn't stop when the invasion ended. They kept burning. In memory, in identity, in silence. After the Benin Expedition of 1897, Benin City was no longer a capital. It was a ruin. A statement, a warning to every African kingdom that dared to resist. The Oba Ovonramwen was captured, not killed, not executed, but exiled. He was taken far from his homeland, to a place where his power meant nothing, where his throne was gone, where his gods were silent. Exile wasn't just punishment. It was erasure, a king without a kingdom, a people without their center, a civilization without its voice. They didn't just take our king, they took our future. The royal palace burned, sacred shrines desecrated, generations of history gone in smoke. And then came the silence. The looting of Benin was not random, it was systematic, calculated, industrial. Thousands of sacred objects were taken, not just art, identity. The famous Benin Bronzes were removed from altars, from royal courts, from the hands of priests and artisans. And then they were sold, auctioned across Europe, displayed in foreign lands, stripped of meaning. In places like the British Museum, they became artifacts, not sacred objects, not living history, just objects behind glass. Imagine this: your history, your ancestors, your identity, taken from you, and then displayed for others to admire. And the worst part, many people never knew where they came from. No mention of the fire. No mention of the invasion. No mention of the blood. Just labels, dates, silence, museum visitor. These are beautiful. Where are they from? Guide Africa. Not Benin. Not a kingdom. Not a civilization. Just Africa. After the destruction came something even more dangerous, a story. Colonial narratives began to reshape reality. Africa was described as primitive, disorganized, without history. Civilizations like the Kingdom of Benin were erased from education. Why? Because acknowledging them would destroy the justification for colonization. If Benin was advanced, then colonization wasn't civilizing. It was conquest. So the truth was buried. Even the craftsmanship of the Benin Bronzes was questioned. Some Europeans claimed they're too advanced to be African. This lie spread across generations, into schools, into media, into global consciousness. And slowly, Benin disappeared. But history doesn't stay buried forever. In the late 20th and early 21st centuries, voices began to rise. Nigeria began demanding the return of its stolen heritage. The Benin Bronzes became a global symbol, not just of art, but of injustice. Debates erupted. Who owns history? The looter or the creator? Some museums resisted. Others began to listen. In recent years, institutions across Europe have started returning pieces slowly, reluctantly, but undeniably. Each returned artifact is more than an object. It is a piece of identity. Coming home. This isn't about the past. It's about dignity. Today, Benin City still stands. It is no longer the empire it once was, but its spirit unbroken. The traditions live on. The artistry continues. The memory survives. New museums are being built. New generations are learning the truth. And the story is being told again, not as myth, not as rumor, but as history. They burned the city. They stole the art. They rewrote the story. But they couldn't erase the truth, because civilizations don't die. When their buildings fall, they die. When their stories are forgotten, and Benin refused to be forgotten. The Kingdom of Benin was never lost. It was taken. And now it is being